Hi, this is Emma from EdTech Emma, and this Getting Started with Google for Education video is all about Google Classroom. Okay, Google Classroom. So starting with Google Classroom, because it is really like Google's mission control center. It doesn't do a whole bunch by itself, but its power is that it interacts with all of these other awesome Google tools and resources and helps you organize and share those with your students. So starting with the very, very basics, how do you get to Google Classroom? From a new tab, you could easily just Google Google Classroom. And it will come up. But one tip I like to share with people is navigating through what I call the waffle on any new Google tab or from a Google browser. In the top right-hand corner next to your own sign-in and icon, you'll see this box of squares, and I call it the waffle. It's one of my many cute little tech terms to use with kids. And from the waffle, if I click into it, you'll see the entire G Suite, right? All of these basic core apps and products. And right in the middle of mine, you have Google Classroom, although I could rearrange these if I wanted to. So I like to navigate from my waffle. I click it and I am in the Google Classroom dashboard. This is the same kind of view that a teacher or a student will have. It just shows all of the classrooms that they've either created or they're enrolled in. So I have a couple already made, but I'll go through the process of creating a new classroom with you. What you do is whenever you're trying to do something new in Google, always look for the plus sign. In this case, it's in the top right-hand corner. I click plus, and because I'm a teacher, I have two options. I can join a class or I create a class. Your students could only join, but as a teacher, you might want to join classes as well. Maybe your administration has a classroom for all the teachers or something like that. But we will create a class. I agree. And then I just give it some basic information. So I could say that this is my period 4 English class. I could also put this information down here where it says section. It's my English class period 4. I could also put my subject down here and give my class an actual name. Let's say we named ourselves, or some schools have names for the actual classes. This could be like my my level 5s and their English period 4, right? So you can kind of create the information based on your needs, or you could keep it really simple and you could just say, this is my year 3 class. So we'll create that classroom there. Google tries to make everything they do as simple as possible by eliminating as many clicks as it takes to do something. So in case of creating a Google Classroom, I think it's 3 clicks. You get there, you click plus sign, and you add for your information. And now we are in our year 3 Google Classroom. The next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to add students. As you can see in my People tab over here, the only person in this classroom right now is me as the teacher. I could add other teachers to this by typing in their email. So I could add my husband's, right? And then he could be a teacher with full access. He can add assignments, he can grade, he can do anything that I could do as a teacher. If you co-teach, that's a great option. Or a lot of teachers just like to share with each other on their classrooms so that they can reuse each other's work. So if you have 3 other year 3 teachers, you could all add each other to your classroom so that you can go in and see what the other year 3 teachers are posting. Really great to share or sometimes steal each other's work that way. Another thing is administrators will often be added to classrooms so that they can go in and they can see the kind of work that's being assigned. You could also add students that way. You could click the plus sign if my husband was my student. I could start typing his name and add him there. But that's a really long and laborious way to add students, and there's a much, much simpler way. So if I go back to the stream where it automatically loaded me in, I see underneath my class name, it says class code. All your students have to do is type this code in, and then they'll be enrolled into your class forever until you unenroll them or they unenroll themselves. One thing to note about class codes, however, is it can get a little confusing. This is a great example. I have an O and I have a 0. This might be fine for secondary students, but a lot of primary students will struggle with this. And maybe the 1 and the I is confusing for them as well. So you actually can reset your code. You can change it if you don't like it. Going into the settings wheel, top right, scroll down to class code here, and I can reset that class code. So if I click that button, it will give me a new class code. This one has another O and 0, so I can do it again. I can reset it again. That one has 3 L's. I can reset it again. There, that one looks good. Now when I go back to my stream, I see my new class code here, and I will display it for my students. If I were a student in that class, all I would have to do is from my Google Classroom, click plus, join, and I type in that code, whatever it was. And then I'll be automatically enrolled into the class. I'm going to show you a classroom that I've already created for a different demonstration. So once my students are in the classroom, if I go over to that People tab, you'll see their names all listed here. From this place, you can really easily email that student, or you'll have the option to invite their parents or guardians to attach themselves to this account. That way, either once a day or once a week or once a month, depending on what the parent chooses, they can get a little notification about what's happening in Google Classroom. So they can see the assignments that are posted, they can see which ones their students have turned in, which ones are late, that kind of thing. I recommend getting a really established use of Google Classroom before you add guardians, just so that the guardians don't get these notifications with very little on it. You really want to have like a robust amount of work on there with really detailed instructions before you invite the parents to start kind of monitoring what you're doing on Google Classroom. So that's the people section. We've got our students in our classroom, we have our teachers. We'll go back to the stream. One of the first things you'll notice about the stream is it's designed to look like a social media stream, a little bit like Twitter or Facebook might look, with your banner and you have your picture and your icon and your little text box. This was done so intentionally. One of Google's kind of core philosophies about pedagogy is that students should be communicating and collaborating as much as possible. So the intention of this stream is to host and have conversations. So as a teacher, I could post something here. I could just say, hello, or I could say, remember your projects, right? I could give little reminders to my students and I could post that there for them. What your students can then do is they can comment and respond. They would say, got it, Miss Pass, or whatever they'd like to say on the stream. Now, if you are a teacher, you're probably thinking, my students would go absolutely bananas with this. And my recommendation is let them. When you first start using Google Classroom, show them the stream and then let them go crazy with the comments. Let them post whatever they want. They'll delete the comments. They'll go absolutely wild. And then tell them to close their screens and then look up at your projector and show them the power that you have on Google Classroom. The first thing you can do is that if a student, let's say Sue had said something inappropriate, if a student does make an inappropriate comment that you don't like on your stream, you can go to your, here's my next cute term, this is your stoplight, the 3 dots is your stoplight. You go to your stoplight, you can delete that comment, but better yet, you could mute Sue. So if I click this, what will happen is, I can also delete it, I can mute her temporarily, which means she can still do her work, but she won't be able to comment on anything on the stream, so she can't participate in these communications. What I would usually do is I would usually delete the comment first, give the student a warning, and then if they were still misbehaving, I would mute them temporarily. You can unmute students just as easily. So Sue is now muted. You can see that little red mute sign next to her name. I would mute the student temporarily, maybe for a day or a week or however long I feel like was appropriate. And then I would tell them that they're being unmuted and that they need to show me that they earned that privilege back by their comments. That's one thing you can do. The second thing you can do is you can show any comments that have been deleted. So if I decided to delete this comment here, when I go to my settings tab, as the teacher, I can say show deleted items here. If I turn that on and save it, once I go back to my stream, you'll see this comment that I deleted is now showing up in a light gray color and it says deleted, but I can still see it. So a history of everything that's been done in your stream is still available. So students should know that if they post something inappropriate and try and delete it, it might not actually be gone, or it won't actually be gone, because you always have that power to show deleted items. So do that in the very beginning. Use it as a little lesson. Talk about digital citizenship and how we talk to each other online and what's appropriate and what's not. It's a really great way to start having those conversations early on. So that's the stream. Great place to have conversation, but the bulk of what you'll be doing in Google Classroom is in the classwork tab. So if I go into my classwork tab, I see just a list of all of the assignments that I'm doing with my students. You have a lot of options here, and they all are from, again, this plus sign. So I'll take you through these options. When I click plus sign, I'll start at the bottom. The first option I have is to create a topic. This just helps with organization. So you can organize however you'd like, Unit 1, Unit 2, different subjects if you're a primary teacher or elementary teacher. You can also drag your assignments around under these units. So just a nice way to organize so your students know where to find their work. You can also reuse work from any other classroom that you are a teacher in or have been a teacher in, which is awesome for saving time, especially if you are using the same curriculum that you did last year. Many of the assignments you're doing are probably going to be the same, so you can just reuse them again. When you click that Reuse Post button, you will get an option to see your other classes. There they are. And I could say I want to reuse a post from this old class that I did, and you can see it's archived here. Even if you've archived your classes, if they're not current classes, you can still go into them and reuse material. So I want to reuse this assignment about Google Slides. I'll click Reuse, and then you'll see this whole assignment pops up with all the information that I had added in the past, and I can just click Assign and reuse it right over again. I can also post materials. Won't do this too often, usually just at the beginning of the year, posting class rules and syllabus and that kind of stuff. Things that you don't need your students to really interact with at all. Most of what you're doing will probably be these top two. These are both assignments. There's a basic assignment, which allows you to add any type of material, but this is a new option, which is called quiz assignment, and all it does is it automatically loads in a Google form for you. So if you want to do a really quick formative assessment like an exit ticket or maybe a do now, and you want to collect data on that, if you click quiz assignment, it'll just quickly give you a Google form that you can click into, and you can edit it and post it for your students. So I could say, this is going to be a quiz. I could just ask one question, and I could say, what was the option A, B, C, D, etc. And then you go in and you can post that for your students. Just saves you a little bit of time, saves you some clicks, like I mentioned earlier. But we'll exit out of that. And mainly what you'll do is you'll probably create an assignment. So I'll take you through creating an assignment from top to bottom. There's a lot of different options, starting with who the assignment is for. Obviously, I'm posting to the classroom that I'm on, but in my school, I was a 6th grade teacher, and I had 4 different sections of 6th grade English, and they would all be doing the same thing. So I could select all those different sections of my 6th grade English and post the same assignment to them at the same time. Saves me, again, from having to go in and create it for each class. Even better than that, though, I can also decide who to assign it for in that class. So by default, all your students in your classroom get the assignment. But if you untick that, you then have the option to decide which students you want to have the assignment. Really excellent for differentiation, where you have maybe 3 different scaffolded lessons, one at a lower level, one at an intermediate, and one at a high level. You can go and create 3 assignments, and maybe the low level, these students will get it. And then my next assignment, these students will get it, right? And so on and so forth. The best thing about this is that you don't have to have that kind of social stigma of separating your students into ability groups. They can all be sitting wherever they want. They open up their Chromebooks or laptops. They go on their assignment. It looks the same for all of them, but they have different levels of support based on this. So I love that. We'll give it a title. So we'll say this is a homework assignment. I would give very detailed instructions so that I can always point my students back to it, or if they're working from home for some reason, they can work through those instructions with their parents. Then I have the choice that I can either have it graded or ungraded. Currently, if it's graded, it's under a point system only, so a number system, but that could be out of any amount. So it could be a 1 through 3, and your students know that 1 is not achieving, 2 is reaching, and 3 is achieving, or whatever system you use. But really soon, you'll see that this system will allow you to grade in different ways, like in words or in letters. So keep your eye on that. That should change soon. You can assign a due date. You don't have to. It's good for secondary students who might need those reminders and start working on, accountability and that kind of stuff. The cool thing about this is it will show them when it's late, but it also defaults to a midnight due date, which really stresses students out. So I would always change the time to something more reasonable for them. And then you can organize. So I created that Unit 2 topic. Once I click that, it'll just automatically fall under Unit 2, so you don't have to drag it there. That's all the basic information, but there's no actual assignment here, right? It's just the shell. What I have to do is I have to add some assignment into it, and I can do that through one of a lot of different ways. I can upload something from my computer, so I could use a Word document or a PowerPoint if I really wanted to, or PDF. That's fine. You can do that. I don't suggest it, though, because the sharing capabilities are so much more limited that way. And you'll see that later when we talk about Google Drive. Speaking of Google Drive, from my workflow as a teacher, the main thing I do is I work in my Google Drive. So I'm here in my Google Drive, my storage space. It's like my creation space. I have my plus sign. I'm saying I'm going to create a new Google Doc or sheet or slide or whatever. I'm creating my students' assignments from here. Most of them right now are living in this folder called Demo Docs. And so I'm creating these different assignments for my class in my Google Drive. And then in Google Classroom, my next option is Google Drive. That's our Google Drive icon. When I click that, all it's doing is it's pulling my Google Drive forward into this little window, and I have all of these same assignments. So if I go Start, which is where that folder was, here are those assignments. This is the worksheet I like to use when I'm demonstrating Google Docs. It's right there. It's called Classwork Template. I select that, I add it, and it's automatically added to the assignment. This is mainly what you'll be doing, I assume, is adding docs from your Google Drive. You could also add a YouTube video. So this pulls the YouTube link up. So if this were about area of a triangle, I might give a support video for students who maybe weren't in class that day or weren't listening or just need a little bit more support. I could add a video there for them to watch. And in my instructions, I would tell them what the video is for. You can also add a link to anywhere on the web. So if you're having them do BrainPop or MyMaths or some other website for instruction, I would always give it as an assignment. So I would post the assignment that says, my maths homework, I would post the link to my maths. The instructions are due, however many units or however much time here. That just helps keep things organized. And again, for students who weren't in class that day, they can always see what they missed and do it at home. But for now, we'll stick with this Google Doc and this video that I attached. And one thing you need to know about docs is, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different ways to share these docs, and they all come from how you have them in Drive. So in your Drive, you can click Share, right? And you can type somebody's email, and you can tell me how you want that person who I send it to access your document. Do you want them to edit it, or comment on it, or view it? Those same options are in Google Classroom, because all Google Classroom is it's a little shell acting in front of your Google Drive. It's just doing the same thing. So for this classwork template, it first defaults to students can view this file, which means they can look at it and nothing else. It's as if I held a poster up in front of my class and I said, look at this. You probably won't use that often. The second option is students can edit the file, which means it's one file that they can all have access to at the same time. That would be as if I took a blank poster, put it on the floor, gave them each a marker, and say, crowd around and everybody write on this poster at the same time. Not recommended for the entire class, usually. It's a little chaotic, but really good for group work and group projects. The final option teachers probably use the most, which is to make a copy of it for each student. When you click that button, your Google Drive will make a copy of that document in each of their Google Drives, so they'll have their own copy of that template. It would be as if you went to the copy machine, made copies, and passed them out. It's really, really handy to use. Obviously, saves time, saves paper, and it also attaches that student's name to the name of the assignment. So this would say classwork template -William if he was the student in my class. So I'll have this make a copy for each student, and then at the bottom, I can decide when I want it assigned. I can either assign it immediately, I can save it as a draft, and you'll see when I click that, or if I were to just exit out, you'll see it kind of saves in this light gray color, and it's under Unit 2, so that was our assignment. But my favorite button is the Schedule button. It's right here in the middle, and it allows you to automatically post at a certain time. The reason this is great is because when I was a teacher, at the end of each day, I used to set up my assignments for the next day. And I would post them right away, and I would go home, and inevitably what would happen is some really motivated student would see on their Chromebook at home that I had posted an assignment, and they would go on and they would look at it and they would decide they wanted to do it. And then in class the next day, they would say, well, what should I do? I already did your assignment last night, which was great that they were excited to do that work, but it meant that I had to think of something new for them to do in class. So I started scheduling assignments to post that next day at, a minute before class started, so I didn't have that problem. But for now, that is our assignment. I'm going to exit out and show you one that has already been done and show you how you can monitor student work and how you can grade it. So I'm going to go into an assignment that I've already posted and done with a group of teacher trainees, just to give you an example of what it looks like. So when I click into this assignment, you'll see all of my students are listed on the left-hand side, and any grades that you've given them are posted there as well. And then on the right-hand side, it shows your students again, but it shows a little preview of that document. Now, when we talked about sharing documents in Google Drive, what happens when you post a document for your student is it makes a copy of that document and it shares it with your student, but it's also your document still. So the two of you are added to that document. So you both have equal access to it, which means in my Google Classroom, when I click into any one of these docs, I can see in real time them working on it. So as a teacher, I would assign an assignment. I would go into this little preview. I can see, oh, Jessica has some photos, so does Rachel, so does Karma, which means they are on track, but maybe Andy needs some help. I can click into his document. And if he were typing, I would see his cursor and I could actually see him working. Then I could maybe go over and say, hey, did you understand the assignment? Do you need some help, et cetera, et cetera. What else Google Classroom does is it kind of gives you this little marking or grading shell when you open up an assignment in Google Classroom. And this is where you can give feedback and give scores. It also loads you automatically into suggesting mode. If I click into this, I could change it to editing mode and I could make changes as if it were my document still. But suggesting mode is nice because you can track changes. So if I go into here and I start making suggestions, it'll show those changes in green. Maybe I delete something, it'll show that change in green, and it'll also make little comments on the side showing me which changes I've made. This is a great way to give real-time feedback to your students. So as they're working on something, you can go in and you can make comments and suggest changes. So they're getting that feedback while they're working and they can make those changes before they submit it for a final grade. If you just want to leave a comment, you can do that by highlighting a piece of text and a little comment bubble will appear on the side, or you can right-click comment and then you can type in a comment here. One amazing thing about Google Classroom is that Google realized teachers were writing or typing the same comments again and again and again for students. Like I would always write, please capitalize, or add more detail, or check your spelling, those kind of things. So they've created a comment bank for us. When I open up my comment bank, I have different comments that I use again and again, and I can add a comment to it. So add more detail. Then when I'm in that piece of work and I want to leave a comment, I can highlight comment. Now this is the only part you have to remember, is to access it, you have to press the hashtag or the hash key or the pound symbol. When you click the pound symbol, your comment bank will appear below, and then you just have to choose the comment you want to add, click, post, and away you go. Saves a ton of time. Obviously, really awesome feature of Google Classroom. After I've left my comments, I can leave a score. So this one I did out of 3, so I could give it 2 out of 3, whatever I want to do. I could also add private comments. These won't appear on the document themselves, but they'll post themselves in Google Classroom underneath the student's name. So right here you say good work. That's a private comment I've left. This is great for leaving kind of more thorough, oops, where did it go? There it is. Leaving more thorough feedback, or if you've given them an assignment that isn't a text document and you can't leave comments on it, maybe you've asked them to upload a photo or something, then you could give your feedback here in the private comment section. Once I've finished with that student, I can click return and it'll release that score immediately. But what I like to do is I like to do all of my student marking and then return to all of them at once. So return multiple submissions at the same time. That just saves you from having some students say, oh, did Miss Pass grade yours yet? No, she did mine, she didn't do mine. So you do them all, you send them all back at once and they can all look together. This little button at the top is maybe the most powerful tool. It just saves you from having to, go through a stack of papers or stack of books. You just scroll through each student and the next document will pop up and you grade and pop up and grade and you keep that momentum and you save a bunch of time in marking, and it's amazing. So that is giving feedback in Google Classroom. Once you're done giving your feedback, you send it all to your students. It'll all appear on this side and they can check their work. Really soon, another feature you'll see coming in Google Classroom is the Google Classroom Gradebook. So here in your tabs, soon you'll see another tab that says Gradebook. It'll look a little bit like this, and you'll see each assignment you've given to your students, what it was marked out of, and the score you gave. And then you also have an overall percentage based on those assignments. I mentioned earlier that you'll be able to grade in different ways, and so you see a little check mark here, or tick mark. You'll be able to do kind of pass or fail, or finished or not finished marking as well. And that will be very exciting. That is the basics of Google Classroom. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be posting a more advanced version soon.